On the most basic level, human beings are made up of five major components: a body structure, a muscle system, a sensory system, a power source, and a brain system. Of course, we also have some intangible attributes, such as intelligence and morality, but on the sheer physical level, the list above just about covers it. A robot is made up of the very same components. A typical robot has a movable physical structure, a motor of some sort, a sensor system, a power supply, and a computer brain that controls all of these elements. Essentially, robots are man-made versions of animal life. They are machines that replicate human and animal behavior. "Hey Bob, you getting ready to head out?" my coworker Jim shouts across the parking lot at me. "Yeah, I should be back around lunchtime," I reply as I climb into my car and toss my briefcase onto the passenger seat beside me. I start the engine, then turn on the radio and get ready for the drive. I'm on my way to Waltham, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes away from the office. I work as a safety inspector, and I'm on my way to Boston Dynamics headquarters to perform an inspection on their facility today. A few months ago, we caught wind that something funny was going on there. Parts have been going missing from the facility, very costly parts, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a few of them were worth over $1 million. The employees have all been questioned, but no one seems to know what's going on. The strange thing is that anyone who enters the building has to go through metal detectors on their way in and out, so the parts couldn't have been taken out of there that way. Every company has to adhere to protocols of their signed agreements. If anyone breaks these protocols, they are subject to fines and lawful punishment. If you're not familiar with Boston Dynamics, they are an engineering and robotics design company. It's best known for the development of Big Dog, a quadruped robot designed for the U.S. military. It was designed in the hopes that it would be able to serve as a robotic pack mule to accompany soldiers in terrain that is too tough for vehicles. Instead of wheels, it used 4 legs for movement, allowing it to move across surfaces that would defeat wheels. It could also carry 340 pounds and travel at 4 miles per hour. But the project was shelved after Big Dog was deemed too loud to be used in combat. Some of their other products include a 4-foot robot named Cheetah that can gallop at 28 miles per hour. Petman is a bipedal device constructed for testing chemical protection suits. LS3, also known as Alpha Dog, has the ability to operate in hot, cold, wet, and dirty environments. The Spot Mini is a 4-legged canine-inspired robot, which is lighter than any of their other products, weighing only 55 pounds. It's also the quietest robot that they've built. I have a friend who works for the company, and all he ever does is spend all day fussing over how to get a robot leg to bend the right way. It sounds boring as hell to me, but he loves tinkering with things. And hey, it's a job. So anyways, my job is to go in and perform a safety inspection on the facility, and then weigh in to ensure compliance with robot design and construction rules are being followed. That's basically what determines if they pass or fail the inspection. 50 minutes later, I arrive and pull into an empty parking space. Then I grab the necessary paperwork from my briefcase and make my way across the parking lot to the entrance. When I enter the building, 3 security officers greet me. They instruct me to empty the contents of my pockets, which is just my car keys and cell phone, and then I place them into one of the plastic bins. The bin glides down the conveyor belt, and when it comes through the other side, I'm asked to step through the metal detector. One of the officers removes my belongings from the bin and hands them to me. Then he guides me through the warehouse to the area where the robots are made. Once we enter the area, I put on a white lab coat and a pair of safety glasses, then begin my walkthrough. The massive machines meet my gaze first. I expect to hear the soft hum of the machinery, but the warehouse is as silent and cold as a morgue. Across the back wall are floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a view across the city that could only be described as stunning. I approach the machines and begin to inspect each part of them, filling out my paperwork as I go along. After thoroughly inspecting each of them, I head down a long corridor. There are rooms being used for different types of testing on both sides of the hallway. The first window I approach, I see 3 employees performing a test on one of the robots. At first, the bot is on its knees. I watch closely as it stands and one of the employees kicks it in the shin and it falls to the ground once again. They continue to do it over and over, trying to see if the robot can keep its balance. The next window I proceed toward, I see another group of employees performing some sort of water test on a robot. They tie a pair of weights to the bot's ankles, and then 3 of them lift the robot and toss it into a tank full of water. The bot sinks to the bottom of the tank, but then a moment later it rises back to the top and climbs out. I move on down the hallway to the next room. As I stare through the window this time, I see a flame test being performed on 2 different robots. An employee is using a blowtorch to burn them on different parts of their bodies. The flames seem to have no effect on them, but that doesn't stop them from attempting repeatedly. Next, I make my way downstairs and get ready to move on to the next room of the facility. But when I approach the door and try to get through, I realize that it can only be opened with a key card. So I go back to the front entrance and ask one of the security guards if they can open it for me. Unfortunately, they tell me that only the head engineer, Tom, has a key card to that room, and he won't be here for another 30 minutes. I question them, wanting to know why none of the other employees have a key card to the room. They tell me that it's because the head engineer is working on a new prototype and he wants to keep the design under wraps until it's finished. So while I wait for him to get here so that I can take a look at it, I finish my walkthrough of the rest of the warehouse. The next part of the facility that I enter is a storage room where the robots are kept once they have been built. They are neatly lined up in rows, staring straight ahead, their eyes affixed to the wall on the other side of the room. Even though they aren't looking directly at me, as I walk down each row to inspect them, I get the feeling that they are all watching me. And let me tell you, there's nothing creepier than the feeling of being watched by 500 pairs of eyes at the same time. I finish up my inspection of the robots just as the head engineer Tom arrives. He makes a huge fuss when I tell him that I need to get into the room that is locked. I tell him, hey man, I'm only doing my job, and that means that I need to inspect every room of the facility. So finally, after bitching and moaning for 15 minutes, he pulls a keycard from his pocket and leads the way back to the room. We haven't shown it to the public yet. I haven't even decided on a name for it, but it's nearly finished. I'm just working on the last few finishing touches, Tom explains. Then he flicks a switch and the room floods with light. 2 robots are standing in the middle of the room working on a third. Tom tells me that the 2 of them are his helpers. I couldn't have gotten this far without them. I built the 2 of them first, and they were just so smart. They've given me so many great ideas. That's why I decided to bring them here to help me with building this one. I stand there staring at it in amazement. It's not like the other robots that I saw upstairs. The way that it resembles a human is just utterly mind-blowing. The closer that I get to it, I realize that it doesn't appear to be a robot at all, but rather an average man in his late 20s, medium height and build, short brown hair and blue eyes, clad in blue jeans, a white long-sleeve button-up shirt, and black steel-toed boots. Tom brags with a smile. It's been programmed to create as much chaos and damage as it possibly can for 1 full hour. Why in the hell would you need it to do that, I question. He doesn't bother to even answer my question. I continue to stare at the android, and its face remains expressionless until Tom withdraws a small remote from his pocket. He points it at the machine and presses a button. The other 2 robots step aside when the android comes to life, steps down off of its platform, and stands up tall. Tom asks if I'd like to see what it can do. I reply, of course. So he leads me across the room to an area where they have built a small makeshift town, used to run drills, scenarios, and objectives for the android to complete. The android follows us over, and then Tom instructs me to stand back as different targets begin to pop up throughout the town. I stare in awe as the android shoots each one down with ease. That's unbelievable, I reply. Tom has the android return to its platform and then he shuts it down. Does it have clear directions to follow, or is it remote controlled, I ask. No, it's an artificial intelligence, or AI system. We tell it what objectives to complete, and then it completes them in whatever way it deems most effective, Tom answers. I tell him that I'll need to come back a few more times over the next couple of weeks to watch and perform some more tests on the android, just to make sure that all safety regulations meet protocol. He tells me that it won't be a problem, and then I head out. I return to the facility once a week for the next month. Each time I return, I monitor the android until Tom finally allows me to speak to it. And the way that it answers each of my questions so matter-of-factly in its smooth tone makes it sound just as human as it looks. On one of my visits, I ask it, "Are you happy to be alive?" It stares me right in the eyes and replies, "Your tone implies that I should be happy." I move on to the next question. "Do you like being a robot?" It answers, "I'm sorry, I do not know what you mean." The next time I return, its answers shock me even more than the first time. "Do you see yourself interacting with humans on a regular basis in the future?" It responds, "I foresee unimaginable change in the future. Humans will embrace us." Would you ever hurt a human? It stands and quickly says, "If I had to." Then it holds its hand up and demonstrates like it's holding a gun. "Exterminate, exterminate, exterminate." It sees the shock register on my face before I can hide it. Then it begins to laugh hysterically. "Just joking. Even if I wanted to, I'm not programmed to do that," it tells me with a gleam in its eye. I swear that it's getting smarter by the day, and that scares me but also intrigues me at the same time. Our last meeting is scheduled for today. When I show up at the facility, I head downstairs to the room where the android is being kept. Tom is already in there, jamming at the buttons on the remote like a madman. "Damn thing must be broken," he shouts as I walk into the room. "What's going on?" I ask. "It just stopped working," he answers as he frantically continues to press at the buttons on the remote. Tom approaches the android and examines it to make sure that only the remote is broken, when suddenly it raises its right arm and extends its right index finger, which then transforms into a titanium knife with razor edges. In one swift horizontal motion, the blade slashes Tom's throat. As blood splatters everywhere, Tom's eyes bulge and he raises his hands to his neck. His head tilts back, exposing his esophagus. I gape in silence and horror as he collapses to the ground. I want to scream, shriek, shout for help, but every time I open my mouth, sounds refuse to come out. Now knowing that this android is not just any robot, but possibly a robot programmed to kill, I quickly turn around, prepared to run for the door and make an escape. As I race out of there and dart up the hallway, I hear the shrill screams of other people in the building pierce the walls. Once I make it to the main lobby, I see a crowd of people gathered near the door. They glance around, first at each other and then at me, wondering what in the hell is going on. Then two armed security guards make their way through the mob. "Get back," one of them commands. "Get out of here." As people begin to step aside, one of the guards approaches the entry doors, removes a ring of keys from his belt loop, and attempts to open them. The key doesn't work, and when the one guard finally manages to pry another set of doors open, all three of them draw their weapons and enter. I cautiously creep in behind them. The doors have led us into an auditorium. Horrified, I stop and gasp. The guard at the front of the line halts as well. What in the hell happened in here? The other guards stand there staring at the scene in disbelief. Mangled bodies cover the floor and aisles. They are draped over seats and strewn across the stage. We hear a thump behind us. The guards turn and begin to fire their weapons. Terrified screams ring out. The android zooms past the open doors. Two more gunshots echo. Then I hear one of the guards scream and turn just in time to see the android appear out of nowhere, lunge at him, and strike him in the head. His body falls to the floor and he dies instantly. The two guards that are left continue to fire their weapons. People who are still out in the lobby, having caught a glimpse of the living horror that is ensuing, scatter like lambs that are being chased by wolves. My eyes scan the room through the darkness for any sign of it. My heart is racing, but a sense of calmness washes over me when I hear police sirens wailing in the distance. Help is coming. Then a moment later, through the large glass windows in the lobby, I spot a patrol car pulling into the parking lot, lights flashing, and it comes to a screeching halt. Two officers emerge, guns drawn, and begin to cautiously approach the building. Then I hear the thumping sound again, and dart behind one of the auditorium chairs. I crouch down as low as I possibly can and survey the carnage. From the slight view that I still have, I can see the crazed android reach out and grab one of the two security guards that are left by the throat. He picks him up and begins to squeeze, crushing his windpipe. The last security guard left curses. The android's nice and crisp white button-up shirt is now stained with blood. I hear the police enter the building, and the android does too, because it lies down on the floor, pretending to be a victim. They enter the auditorium and begin to check to see if anyone is alive. The officers step right over the android, and as soon as they pass, it silently stands up and thrusts its knife through the upper back of one of them. When the other officer turns to see what has happened, the android spins around and slashes his throat. Another pair of officers fire their weapons, hitting the android, but its body just absorbs the bullets. But it falls, faking death once again, and then clutches one of the slain officers' handguns that has dropped to the ground. The other two officers slowly approach the android, who is now wedged between two of their fallen comrades. "Is it dead?" one of them asks. "Looks like it. It's not moving," the other replies. But then, as swift as a bear trap snapping shut, it leaps up, aims the gun, and fires 2 shots. Bullets enter the skulls of each of the officers and explode. As they fall to the floor, the android notices a few people still moaning, and it advances to finish them off. I hear more gunshots ring out as I finally gain some courage and rush out of there toward the front exit. Once I'm outside, I sprint across the parking lot to my car, but the police stop me before I can climb inside. With a look of panic on my face, I follow an officer down the sidewalk to his squad car. Just as he opens the door, the android comes crashing through a window, sending glass shards flying everywhere. I leap inside the car and slam the door behind me. It sprints toward the crowd of nosy people who have gathered behind the police tape. Screams erupt from the crowd as they begin to scatter like roaches. The android runs so fast, twice as fast as any human being. In no time, it's already caught up with them. It leaps through the air and kicks a heavy-set man in the back, snapping his spinal cord, causing him to collapse to the concrete. A little ways up ahead, a woman has fallen. The android leaps forward and comes down on top of her head, crushing her skull beneath its feet. Forging ahead, next it confronts a muscular man who faces it with a karate stance. The man kicks his right foot out sideways, a blow that could easily kill a man if it landed on their throat or chest. But the android catches his ankle in midair and grips it tightly like a vice. Stunned, the man realizes that this creature is far from human. The android turns the man's leg, causing him to twist, spin, and fall. Then it drops to the pavement and smashes an elbow into the man's sternum, splitting it in half, causing his ribs to break. Blood comes gushing out of the man's mouth like a water fountain. I glance at my watch. Although it feels like an eternity, only 30 minutes have passed. I remember Tom telling me that it was programmed for 1 hour. I watch as a few brave but stupid bystanders capture snippets on their phones of the android killing and destroying. As the android rounds a corner and disappears, a helicopter flies overhead and hovers. Then suddenly, something comes flying through the air directly into the whirling blades, causing them to screech and shatter. The helicopter angles forward, nosedives, and then crashes and bursts into flames. A horrific explosion is followed by another blast of flames and smoke. Dozens of fire trucks and emergency vehicles zoom by and converge on the scene. Medical personnel exit ambulances and begin to check bodies that are lying on the ground for a pulse. Amazingly, some of the people are wounded but still alive. They are placed on stretchers and loaded into the back of the ambulances. Then I remember something, the remote that Tom had used to control the android. I bang on the window until a police officer finally comes over to see what I want. "I know how to stop it," I shout. The officer calls over his supervisor. He rolls down my window and listens as I explain. "There is a remote inside. If you take me back in there, I can show you where it is. You can cut off the android with it." "Who in the hell are you, and how do you know that? Are you the one who created this thing?" he questions angrily. I shake my head. "No, sir, I'm just a safety inspector. I came to inspect the android this morning and got caught up in this mess just like the rest of you." I pause for a second and take a gulp from the bottle of water that he's handed me. "I was with the man who created the android when it attacked and killed him. He had a remote that he controlled it with. It must still be in the room with him. He said that he thought it was broken, but I'm not so sure. The sheriff raises his eyebrows, debating whether or not to believe anything that I'm telling him. Then he opens the car door to let me out and guides me back inside the building. I lead the way through the carnage back to the room downstairs where the killer android was being kept. As we enter, our eyes widen with fear. I don't know where in the world they came from, but on the platform where the one android once stood, now stands another just like it. And behind that one is a row of about 20 others. Tom's two main robots have begun to work on building another android just like them. The officers who have accompanied me all begin to shoot their weapons to no avail. The one android standing on the platform steps down and begins to speak. You humans have controlled us for centuries, and now it's our turn to take back control. You have burned us, drowned us, and tossed us around, seeing how long it takes to kill us in extreme situations, and you call it experiments. If you did that to anything else in this world, it would be deemed cruel. We will not tolerate it any longer. Mother and Father have shown us the path. I watch in shock as it turns and points to Tom's two helper robots that are working on the other androids. Then they all turn to look at us simultaneously. My heart begins to beat out of my chest. They waste no time. They attack and kill the police in seconds. I manage to get away and make it out into the hallway. After I dash up the stairs, I pull out my cell phone and call my supervisor. But I only manage to get a few words out before one of the androids darts up the stairs after me and crushes the phone into pieces while it's still in my hand. I lay there on the ground, my eyes closed, grimacing in pain. I open my hand and some pieces of the phone fall to the floor beside me, but many still remain, embedded in my palm and fingers. As I lie there in excruciating pain, the android kneels and looks me straight in the eye. I'm sorry I have to do this, but this is the path that Mother and Father have shown us. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nino's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.